Now let's get to meet our guests for this morning. And we have Samuel Okudzeto Ablakwa, the Honorable MP for Norton and Ranking Member, Foreign Affairs Committee of Parliament. Also here in the studio is Richard Ahiagba. Richard Ahiagba is the Executive Director of the Dankwa Institute. Joining us via Zoom are Dr. Theo Echampong, economist, political risk analyst, and senior fellow, Imani Africa. Also, Professor Kwesi Ening, who is Director, Faculty of Academic Affairs and Research, Kofi Annan International Peacekeeping Training Center. Gentlemen, good morning, and thank you very much for joining us.
Good morning.
Good morning, Samson.
Right. Now, thank you. Before we start, just in some 30 seconds, why are you politicians suddenly going around the place and, engaging crowds as though COVID-19 is over?
Good morning to you, Samson. Good morning to the panel and our viewers and listeners across the globe. It's a very important matter you have raised, and we must be sincere about it, that we have to do more to get our people to comply with the protocols. It's good that you are raising awareness and reminding all of us about our obligations. It's a matter that I believe that as political parties, we should take responsibility, that our gatherings should be socially distanced. The irony is that we all agree that there are no rallies for this campaign, at least this far. The protocols are clear that there will be no rallies. However, you've had rally-like events. I have been with the Running Mates campaign, Professor Nana Jopukwajiman, where she insists that the protocols are observed. So she would make sure that in terms of the pre-event discussions, she asks those questions of her team. However, as she approaches and upon arrival, it becomes people put the chairs away, social distancing is ignored, and people take off their masks, or sometimes they pull down the mask, to the chin level. So it's one of those things that you say that all of us are not doing enough.
Some of the footages, President Mahama, throwing masks into the crowd. Yeah. And people are actually falling upon each other just to pick a mask. I don't get it.
No, I mean, it's important to stress that some people in our country will think that masks are so affordable. But particularly for some of us who are MPs in rural areas, we know how important it is to make it available. And we have been doing that. And I'm glad you point out the fact that President Mahama, indeed, all our candidates, including members of parliament, all parliamentary candidates, have been sharing masks, even before events. But sometimes it's becoming more or less like, I think the public education has not gone down very well. So some people want to even keep the mask as some, if you like, paraphernalia or memorabilia, and they are not really concerned about the health implications. Right. So we all need to draw awareness, and platforms like this should be used to call for greater responsibility. Right. I mean, and it's timely you raise this.
So just show leadership.
Look at what's happening in the United States.
You guys have spoken to us enough. Show leadership. Dr. Theo Echampong, where you are, you even are in the risk of going into another lockdown, as we understand. What do you make of the pictures and the videos you are seeing about how our political leaders, including the president, are conducting themselves?
So as we say, and good morning, I think talk is cheap, and you can clearly see that on the campaign trail by the political leadership. So on one hand, we have the president and the government advocating for us to wear masks, practice social distancing, and all of that which comes with it, which is all great. But they don't seem to be following it themselves, particularly on the campaign trail, which is a bit shocking. But also kind of understanding when you look at Ghana's, history and the history of compliance with some of these initiatives. So where I am here in the UK, there's very strong enforcement on it. In fact, households cannot even mix as we speak currently, and groups of more than 6 cannot mix, all because there is a second wave of the virus currently going on in the country, and there are attempts to bring it down. And that doesn't seem to be the case. We've just been lucky.
Yeah.
The point is that we've been largely spared any major, deaths, etc. in Ghana, but we cannot be complicit. So I actually support the call that you've just made, that we should see our politicians and political class taking it a bit more seriously, as in the next few weeks we head into the heated season of the political rallies and campaigns.
Thank you, Dr. Theo Champong. And Richard, so what was the purpose of the president passing those EIs, where he says there should be no political rallies? The law prohibits political rallies. The law is clear about how many people can actually gather, or forget it, even if we have lifted. Then we say there should be social distancing. We should enforce the protocols. There should be mask wearing, mandatory. That law expired about 2 weeks ago, and then he renewed it. So what's the purpose? I don't know if that's the purpose. This particular thing, I don't know if that's the purpose, but it doesn't look as if the president is taking extreme caution to ensure that he's protecting himself, to the point that since COVID-19 showed its head, I have seen that a chair is carried for him wherever he goes. He goes with his own chair. So what is this? Endangering the people and everybody else.
Well, good morning to my co-panelists and your good self and the viewers. I think that you spoke my mind when you were saying that we should take leadership. What you describe about the president is showing leadership. By being exemplary, you expect the population to follow his lead, and I think that's the best example you want to leave out there. But what has happened generally across board, even take away the campaign, when you move out of Accra, and I'm sure you see that and all of us see that, people don't take wearing the nose mask seriously. They don't wear. There are people who still believe that the virus is not even real. So it's a state of mind already that where the government is faced with and trying to overcome. And the laws that is passed to sanction those behaviors, you can only apply those laws if there is mass, compliance. But if the whole population is not complying with the law, you probably end up arresting everybody and locking everybody up. So it's a situation where we need to continue to educate. And most of the issue that you've shown, the pictures you've shown, is a spontaneous gathering of people. And my brother alluded to instances in their own gathering where people were warned to use their mask, but then suddenly, spontaneously, that goes out of the window. So it's a question of continuous education.
No, why should you, the politicians, and this example where the president goes into the market center, what does he expect when he goes into the market center? That the people will stand back and watch, and that they will not mail in like they did?
Yeah, I mean, it's the same thing you expect of the two of us to come here and behave. Okay, we can decide to misbehave. So he goes there, and per the education that is given and his continuous insistence and his own example of wearing the mask, demonstrate that there is something of a change about our lives, and he expects as a leader the people to comply. And with what we're known to be true about life in Ghana is that as far as COVID-19 is concerned, outside of Accra, even within Accra, people don't wear the mask for whatever reason, and I think that your platform and your elevation of it should engender that discussion forward. So we can let people know.
Let's hope so, because this state cannot afford it.
Absolutely.
Cannot afford the consequences of, a spiraling out of control of COVID-19. We simply can't afford it. It is God that has saved Africa. Else, we would have been damned and doomed. So let's just stop it. Let's stop these things that will bring COVID-19 to this country.
No, absolutely agree. And I was going to propose that perhaps it's time to review the campaigning so far. It's become evident that you cannot have our candidates go out
Without
and there will be no massing up.
Mobbing,
I mean, people just throw caution to the wind.
Yeah.
So perhaps, do we just go virtual, have a total virtual campaign, forget about going out there, outdoor?
For now, the protocols are there. Just obey them. The laws have been made. Just obey them. But when those making the laws are not obeying the laws, that's really the difficulty.
No, you see leadership wearing the mask,
poor
trying to social
citizens
distance.
are the ones that, because I saw your campaign launches, your manifesto launches.
Yeah.
You were adhering to the protocols.
Yes.
But when you go into these people, they do not have the opportunity of the luxury of the things that you do when you protect yourselves.
Yeah, that's the spontaneity of the environment. And I think that more should be done on the front of education, I think.
Okay. All right. Thank you. Now let's go to the issue of the secessionists. Okay. As we know, there has been a very important meeting that was held yesterday in the Volta region, a meeting that was held at the behest of the chiefs, because they are concerned that this group of people, gave us such a surprise, which many people say ought not to have been a surprise, because the state has been aware of this group and their activities and threats, not veiled threats, open threats, for a long time. So how did it happen that they held people to ransom? They seized 2 police stations, actually cost a life and harmed people. When I heard about the number of pellets that were shot into the police commander who was taken to 37 here from the Volta region, I was surprised. They simply intended to kill him. Just kill him, waste him, so to speak. So how is this going to be resolved? As we understand, 54 of them have been processed for purposes of, being tried in the courts. Out of that is a total of 60 of them, or the 61 that have been arrested so far. Beyond that, what else will be done? Because from the very first day of the arrest, the next day, they went to the STC yard in the region and burnt, an STC bus. Initially, there was intelligence that they intended to burn the whole central market. What else can we expect of them, and what should be done to avoid what they may be capable of doing? So let's begin with you, Mr. Okudzeto Ablakwa.
So, Samson, this is a matter that is so vexed, so complicated, that is very serious, that borders on the stability, the territorial integrity of our country. As Member of Parliament for Northton, you do know that I bore the brunt of the invasion or insurgency of September 24, the dawn of that day. As I speak to you, I have lost 2 of my constituents, not 1, 2. Emmanuel Kale, the innocent bystander in Japan, and Seira Matichobi, who's from Mefe. I have visited the families, and I want to use this opportunity to renew my condolences and extend my sympathies to the families and to all those who got injured, including the police commanders. What happened, Samson? You would think it's a chapter from a Hollywood movie. To have 2 police stations, and the only police stations that really protect us, that we run to for succor, the Mefe police station, the Aveima police station, and it appeared to be a very well coordinated attack at about 1:40 a.m., pretending to be coming to lodge a complaint. They just distracted the police personnel on duty and then swamped in their numbers took them hostage.
So that's how they did.
That's what they
did.
They
went there pretending to lodge a complaint.
Yes, holding one of their own, handcuffed, and then as they tried to take the statement, then the others swam in and just take over. There were many. They tell us that not less than 70 per police station. And they knew exactly what to do and where to go. They went straight for the armories, managed to open them. They showed some level of sophistication that is mind-blowing. Took out weapons, all the weapons they could find. So at the Aveime police station, we have been told by the police commander that 19 weapons. So 15 AK-47, 4 pump-action guns. They did a similar operation at the Mefa police station. They had 2 weapons in their armory. They then managed to free the inmates in the cells and replace them with the police after stripping them naked. They didn't stop there, Samson. They continued to the district assembly in North Town, beat up the security on duty, beat them to pulp, managed to get in, ransacked the assembly, took out all the computers, documents, and then some furniture, and managed to find keys to the pickup that the DC uses, and added it to their fleet. Remember that they had also managed to take the Sogakofa police pickup. Okay. And that police pickup was leading a reinforcement team from the divisional command, headed by...
How daring.
Yeah, very daring. What the divisional police commander tells me, and last night we spoke, is that he is still wondering how they overpowered them by the superior firepower they exhibited and the level of precision, because they engaged them. They engaged them in a gun battle. But clearly they had more sophisticated weapons and the level of precision, and it's totally mind-blowing. So you have that pickup taking over, and then they disarmed the reinforcement team, took their weapons, including the police commander's pistol. Now, while all of this was going on, it's important to stress that they were in no hurry to leave the place after overpowering the police stations. They managed to still parade the streets with these vehicles in jubilant moods. They then stopped the river sun winning vehicles. My constituency is the center for a lot of sun winning, from the Volta River, the bed of the Volta River. They stopped these trucks, led them to the boundary between Sege and Aveime, and then asked them to offload the suns, blocked the street, and then erected their flags. They had also replaced the police flags at the police stations with their Western Togoland flags, and then continued to jubilate. I had spoken to the National Security Minister at about 4 a.m., and he assured that a reinforcement team was being sent, and they knew the difficulties that the team from Sogakofa had encountered. I still think the response was rather slow, and that we could have acted faster to round them up. As it is now, they managed to really finish their operation and left the scene. Remember that at the same time, simultaneously, across the river, also in my constituency, Joapong, they had also carried out the same operation, erected barriers, and claimed to have taken over the Volta region. And my constituency is the gateway to the region. So their understanding is that if we take over North Tongue and we erect barricades, then we have taken over the Volta region. Quite an interesting way of thinking. And for hours, prevented commuters from entering the Volta region, generated so much traffic and chaos, and they were still very jubilant. And remember that they had vehicles that they could add to their fleet. They had a Ford vehicle, which they continued to use to foment trouble. Finally, the reinforcement team arrives, detachment of military police. There were gunshots, exchange of fire. That's where Emmanuel Kale, a young coconut seller at the Salvation Junction in Japong, sadly lost his life. And most of the people who did this, the real perpetrators, spirited away. So a lot of the people who have been picked up, the 31 initially picked up at Japong. Indeed, I raised this matter when we met the regional minister during the week. The regional minister indicates that they are looking closely at 9 of them. 9 appears to know something about the group, but the rest, they admit, they don't seem to know anything about the group. They just had to round all of them up. So we continue to appeal that it's important that the innocent ones are released as quickly as possible. You know, but Samson, this whole matter, as a Pan-Africanist, I am not oblivious of the fact that this is one of the relics of colonialism. And we need public education. We cannot denounce colonialism. We cannot complain about what the imperialists did to us, how they divided us, how they looted this country, and raped us, exploited us. And yet, in today modern Ghana, some people want to go back to these relics. These relics that, I mean, Otto von Bismarck and his colleagues sat in Berlin in 1884 and decided to divide Africa amongst themselves. This whole British Togoland versus German Togoland, that's the genesis, that's where it comes from. So we cannot be denouncing colonialism, say we are free and independent people. The very young people who are even agitating for this say that we want freedom, we want to be respected, we want our rights valued, and yet we want to go back to these colonial strictures. It's the paradox. It's so glaring.
A good number of them are even very ignorant about what they are pursuing.
Very, very ignorant. The level,
as far as the landmarks concerning what exactly is the Togoland that they are supposed to be advocating for is concerned.
Absolutely, something. Absolutely. I mean, because, and I'm glad you raised this matter, because in my constituency, which today is bearing the brand, we were never part of Western Togoland. Okay. The entire Tong, the entire Anglong has never been part of Western Togoland.
Right.
We have been all along, historically, been part of the Gold Coast and Ghana project. If you look at the plebiscite of 9th May 1956, we didn't take part in the election. We didn't vote. Western Togoland is today parts of Pando, Ho-Ho-Hoi, of Dagbon, Mamprusi, the Boku areas, parts of Togo, parts of Benin. You know, so the level of ignorance is shocking, something. And the pollution and the total distortion of history. I mean, look, this Western Togoland.
Why have we allowed these secessionist groups, the Homeland Study Group, and the 2 others, Restoration, whatever, all these years to sort of, you know, proselytize, indoctrinate the people in this manner?
Look, growing up in the Volta region, for example, and I'm sure, Richard, you heard that the plebiscite is a 50-year decision, and that after 50 years, pollution, nothing like that. I have looked at UN Resolution 101. I've looked at all the and
you know that's what they say all the time.
Yeah. But there's no basis.
They've granted interviews internationally to international media. And this is what they
the plebiscite was a one-off decision, and I have the votes here. Those who were for the union with Gold Coast, the British Togoland should join the Gold Coast. At the end of the 9th May plebiscite, which was supervised by the UN agent Eduardo Espinosa, 93,090 against 67,492. It was a permanent decision, settled. We were not to go back in 50 years or 60 years or 70 or 100 years. In any case, if you look at this colonial division of Western Togoland, I have here this book, which is a history of the Ewe people by Jacob Spade. And Jacob Spade, I must state for the records, is the most authoritative anthropologist on the Ewe people. I mean, Jacob Spade is like what Rattray is to the Ashantis, or Christella to the Equiapims. I mean, you can't go wrong with Jacob Spade. So authoritative. And this work was sponsored by the German Foreign Office, the Colonial Department. And he presents the map on page 2 of his book, The Introduction. And he talks about the Ewe people as they took control over in 1890. And you have Togo, at the time a population of 1.5 million. You have Cameroon, population of 3.5 million. Southwest Africa, 200,000 people. East Africa, 7 million people. And this footnote is interesting. It says, assuming that the treasures of a colony are in its population, then Togo is not only the most prolific, the most fruitful, but also the wealthiest German colony in Africa. We should therefore not regret the work and capital we are investing in Togo. So this Western Togoland, I mean, dream, which is worse than a wet dream, is just hubris, really. It goes beyond Volta region. Indeed, many parts of the Volta was not part of it. Present-day northern, upper east, parts of even Bono, the Yeji area, parts of the present-day Togo, present-day Cameroon, present-day, because if you look at Southeast and East Africa, you are talking about Burkina Faso, Benin. The Ewe people are spread all over. How are these people going to get these sovereign nations now to hive off parts of their country to help them achieve this dream? It's totally impossible. It's the most reckless and most treasonable thing to even think about.
Okay.
And you see, if I may...
I want you to pause, and then I'll return to you to have a conversation about what is the solution. Because it does appear the solutions have been failing us over the period. Yes, so Richard, and I gathered as Sami spoke, you kept nodding and you kept, sort of prodding him and encouraging him on the points that he was making. What for you sticks out? And the two of you are sons of the land. So what a better way to have a discussion. What do you, how do you proceed with this discussion, looking at the younger people who, like I said, have been proselytized in a way that they don't seem to be ready to listen to any other alternative view, which is actually the correct and accurate history?
Well, thank you. I agree largely with the history and background of the Transvolta Togoland, and so there's no disagreement there. But the only question is really the endeavor of this group. I think the Western Togoland Restoration Front is the other one.
Right.
And their pursuit of this objective in a location that is not part of what they are seeking. And in seeking that, across board, there is no unanimous or more or less collective decision that this is what we want. So then that reduces their effort to a few people with an agenda to create mayhem, which I agree with you when you call them criminal, because then you are locating your pursuit in a place that is not part of what you're seeking. Now, the challenge I find with this, which is the challenge people encounter, countries encounter, I think Cameroon had to deal with that in Nigeria at some point when people are seeking some of these things, is how do you deal with them in ways that you don't create incidental or unintended casualties in the population? And I think that has been the bane of having to deal with these people. But going forward, I think that there's a need to engage and decisively try to smoke out these individuals and deal with them, because what they are seeking is not justified. There is no support for it, and so therefore there must be a need to. There's a need to actually deal with it. Now, so, the young people
at the meeting of these chiefs, and even before they met, you see the unanimity of voice in condemning them,
the act,
and actually proposing earlier, some of the chiefs proposing that they will want to let their warriors, step in if the state needs extra security.
I think that is comforting, and it's good that we have that unanimous position to try to deal with this. And in fact, in the Volta region, by and large, there is no support for this, and people would show up just to watch the silliness, of it, and they now got caught into all of this. But if you really want to see it, less than any, maybe just the people who are gathered there are the ones who are feeling this. So the general population of the region certainly is not in support of that. So that is the basis for that wide condemnation. But what we need...
We have heard the contrary also, that you have groups, particularly the Homeland Study Group and the Restoration Group, that they are funded. Even government says that it is aware of financiers. The minister for the region has also been, some of these things have been said against him, and he says these are malicious, defamatory, and he may even take, an action against people for saying that against him.
In the nature of things, and the stories of these kinds of rebellion in other countries, they almost all the time, if you look at the trend, they're funded by interest outside the country, and oftentimes will be natives who are outside, who are engaged in some kind of pursuit for relevance or for whatever objective they're seeking. So that link is there, and I won't be surprised if it's the same in the case of the Volta region or this group, that they are obtaining funding from familiar people from the area who are interested in causing this kind of disturbance. But generally speaking, I think that because the population in general is not in support of it, they don't have public will behind them, and the complete geographical area is not pursuing this, it makes it easy now to deal with, to try to isolate and then handle them single-handedly in a way that really quashes this thing. I see this as a plot by some people, and if permitted, I think, in my view, looking at it, the absence of general support for it and the isolation of the Bator traditional area, which does not belong to the place, appears to me some people just interested in creating chaos, and for whatever end, I'm not sure, but we can speculate.
We understand that some of the recruitment activities they have been able to do, they have been successful at it because they do it, sort of a 419, telling people, unsuspecting people, that the Ghana Army is recruiting. So they are able to get the people to join them, and then they take them to the forest and they are training them. We have seen their groups, and they seem organized. Contrary to, the way we want to wish them away and suggest that they are some, non-entity or a group that does not amount to anything by way of strategy and thinking.
I think the approach is okay so far. What has been done, and yesterday the meeting, the sentiments coming out of the meeting is that there's going to be continual engagement, and I think that beyond the chiefs, we need to, the traditional leaders, we need to get to civil society and the population by and large. There must be widespread education to let people understand that this is inimical to the interest of the country and the people in the Volta region, and that their pursuit is not our pursuit. Their pursuit is their selfish parochial interest that they're pursuing to create mayhem and to destabilize what we have built together as a country. And that education and getting the people to rally around the flag and make sure that we are moving this country forward as one. I think that education will undermine their presence anywhere and move us forward.
You have launched already deep into the solutions in stopping this. I'll go to Dr. Theo Echampong, but Dr. Theo Echampong, listen to Togbi Tepre Hodo. Teprehodo, who is the Vice President of the Volta Regional House of Chiefs. And let's hear him first.
That what has happened, or the events that happened over the weekend and last night, are all plain criminal acts. I think that's the premise from which we should start all the talk. Mm. And you see, as far as all of us are concerned, even if these people claim to have some case, I don't think that they are bringing that case up in the proper way. We live in a civilized society, and I think that what people ought to do to articulate their grievances is to follow due process. The mere fact that they have resorted to these kinds of acts, which are criminal in nature, for some of us, makes it very difficult for anybody to even throw any sympathy at them. That is the starting point of all these discussions. Because if you go on this kind of rampage, you cause bodily injury to people. Death has resulted. And as we have stated in our press statement, innocent people have even been arrested. I don't think this kind of thing all very well for any group of people who would want to be held.
Right. So, Vice President of the Volta Regional House of Chiefs, Togbi Hodo IV, and Dr. Theo Champong, you listen to this chief speak in the manner he speaks, and he makes no room even for any attempt to treat these guys with kid gloves, as it may be said. And this is a lawyer, a very senior lawyer at that. How do you propose, what do you see, and how do you propose we go about this situation?
Yeah, thank you once again. Yeah, I mean, the act itself may be criminal, but the solution to it is multifaceted. And as Honorable Ablako has actually just eloquently explained, to really get to the solution, you need to understand the genesis of the issue. In fact, I was drawn to this Togoland issue back in August of 2016 when it first got a lot of traction in the media. And I decided to do quite extensive research to really sort of also get my head around why some particular group of people would want to secede from the sovereign state of Ghana. I
must confess, I was surprised learning that you were writing about this subject matter. We know that when it comes to petroleum and economy, then your name pops up. But it comes to this matter, and I find that you are writing about it. Yes, so proceed.
Yes. And funny enough, the writing actually has become sort of one of the reference articles on this issue. Mm-hmm. I'm not necessarily a historian or a security analyst. I'm just somebody who has an interest in the matter at hand and anything concerning the sovereign nation of Ghana. I think, yes, the history is go back to the 1884 Berlin Conference and the carving up of Africa, and then subsequently the 1956 plebiscite, in which there was almost a vote of 2:1. So Honorable Blacker gave you the numbers of 93,000 people voting for the union against 67,000 roughly against. And the region, also the fact that the particular region in question, the Togoland, is not just a question of Eves per se, but there are other ethnic groups, encompassed in that whole border landscape or demarcation. But fast forward, you begin to see a number of interesting events happen after 2016 or August of 2016, when the group becomes much more kind of vociferous. So in between in 2017, we had the group intending to actually launch some number of campaigns. In 2019, about 9 members were arrested, including, if you remember, a 7th Army officer who wanted to plan an attack. And then in 2020, we saw 21 recruits of the group being arrested at a paramilitary training facility at Doje in the Volta region. What it all tells me is that this shouldn't really come as a surprise per se. The antecedents have been there, or the intelligence on the ground did point to the group growing in capability and growing in scope. And so the attack over the last weekend was one that was very well executed. It was well coordinated. I mean, the mere fact that they can actually seize a police station, not one, but two, and seize over 10, AK-47 assault rifles and block a major highway over 6 hours, causing delays on either side, does indicate to me that the group has actually expanded in their operational capability and scope. And speaking to some of my intelligence sources in Accra, and indicates that they are likely being funded by vested groups on both sides, not the political parties, but I mean in Lomé and then also in Accra, and by people in the diaspora. So I don't wish I take the threat of the group as quite credible, and I think clearly what we are likely to see going forward, even if the acts are criminal and you prosecute some of them, we might actually end up seeing one or two of such low sophistication attacks on certain facilities and targets going forward. Because I think the underlying issues about the supposed marginalization of the region, the ethnic sentiments, the sort of pan-Ewe nation state agenda, and the support of the communities even themselves in some of these places, does indicate to me that not until we address those core issues, the group will still be pushing or advocating for a number of these interests. So yes, the criminal acts side and the prosecution is good, as the chiefs and others have called for. But I really think that going forward, it really needs a multifaceted approach. So I would like to see the regional House of Chiefs actually being much more involved in the discourse. I'd like to see the Council of State also being much more involved in the discourse. And I actually like to see some sort of mediation talks, right, on both sides, where you bring the different groups, because it's not just the Homeland Study Foundation. There are 2 or 3 other groups, including the restoration of the Western Togoland group, and resolve the issue. Because fundamentally, the nation or the sovereign state of Ghana must remain intact, and the issue of the plebiscite has been settled. It is not a 50-year thing, and so we need to really then again on the third front deepen the education and entrench the education to disabuse the minds of a lot of these youth who feel like they don't belong to the nation, the sovereign nation of Ghana.
Okay, now just hold on. I want us to listen to Dr. Emmanuel Bombande, board chair for the Global Partnership for the Prevention of Armed Conflict. But I return with a substantive question to people like you, Colonel retired Festus Abuaje, and Dr. Kosienin, who suggest that whilst we deal with them on the criminal front, there should be some mediation, negotiation of sort. How do you deal with a group or persons whose action appear clearly to fall under the UN's definition of terrorism? You deal with them in the manner some of you are suggesting. Let's listen to Dr. Emmanuel Bombande first.
What these people are doing is creating, for me, a time-wasting strategy that reinforces how they have nothing to offer but truly just to be factors of destabilization. That is why it's important to re-emphasize that such a perspective makes it incumbent on government not to handle people they have arrested in a manner that gives credence to the misplaced views of these opportunists.
Okay.
And to that then therefore, we need to handle this very well so that these opportunities do not say, look at how they are even treating the people they have arrested. Because these 31 people, if I listen to counsel Mr. Donko, should be respected. The other day we spoke, Mr. Donko even talked about how they were not fed. They should be well treated and humanely treated to exemplify that the modern democratic state of Ghana takes care of everybody with fairness and equity. And the more they do that, the more these opportunities are exposed and the more their adventure should immediately end so that Ghana can have its peace, conduct a peaceful election, a peaceful transition, and continue to reinforce and deepen its democratic tenets and development prospects. What these people are doing is creating, for me, a time-wasting strategy.
So that's Dr. Emmanuel Bombande. And Theo Champong and those who think like you in the way of suggesting some negotiation or mediation, you want to also hear President Akufo-Addo and more particularly Dr. Bawumia, who clearly rules out any option for, engaging them in some negotiation. And I'd like you to listen to President Mahama also, who suggests that we're actually, treating them with kid gloves. Last week I confirmed to you from the Attorney General's Department that, like you gave the statistics, over the period they have been trying to cause one trouble or the other, and as many as 45 of them, had been arrested and they were facing trial in various courts in Tamale, in Wa, Ho, and Accra. Now we have 55 more that have been arrested in this fresh situation. So let's listen to President Mahama, President Akufo-Addo, and Dr. Bawumia rule out completely any negotiations with them.
There's always the element of surprise. You can never do anything about it. That's why there are terrorist outrages. How come 9/11? The element of surprise is there at the beginning for all terrorist groups, the element of surprise. But after a time, when the system is working, you're no longer going to be surprised. So this they've done once or twice. Third, fourth, fifth time, it's not going to be so easy.
The President of the Republic of Ghana.
I don't want that impression at all. So somehow or other, I'm feeling complacent about this. On the contrary,
but I hope so. Yeah, what's the American first time? What's the
Ghana same someone come work our family when they send it in baby. Ya can't. As a man, could you grab me to be transferred? Yes, I have to be calm because institutions are in place. The security agencies are doing their work. They've started already and we'll see results. If I panic, the country panics. I mean, I'd say if I had panicked, but I know I'm Shishema Yina, and so meaning, sir, a Juma, Yakupo Yimisame Babayano. Some men so many eyes say me him more. Man, be him. That is not the purpose of leadership. I'm supposed to assure people that our country will work. The Kosovo Volta region, in the time of these handful, there's just a handful of people, these secessionists, we will deal with it. I have no doubt about it.
There's been some good intelligence work taking place, and we've seen some work. We're going to have to even double and triple the effort, but we've invested a lot in the security services since we came into office, and they've done quite a bit, both the police and the army, in terms of vehicles, in terms of ammunition, in terms of conditions of service, and so morale generally is very high. We've invested in a lot of intelligence equipment and so on. And so we're going to have to do more, because it's a live situation that we are dealing with now on a minute-by-minute basis, and they are deploying the resources as we speak into these areas. So we're going to continue to do well, and I know that the directions of the president are quite clear in terms of dealing with this, and the military, police, national security, they are all focused on this matter. We in Ghana need unity. This is not a partisan matter. We need unity across all regions, across all tribes, across all religions. We need to talk and provide necessary intelligence.
It's clear that this president hasn't taken this matter seriously. He hasn't. I mean, I don't know, the whole government, the security service, it's like they have a very lackadaisical attitude towards the issue of Western Togoland. There's nothing like Western Togoland. Ghana's territorial integrity is a sovereign matter. No inch of this country must be ceded to anybody. Our constitution makes it clear that we must protect the territorial integrity of Ghana. It's one of the most serious things that the constitution deals with. And that's why when I was president and we had that maritime boundary issue, I did not sleep over it. I didn't want 1 inch of our maritime boundary to be ceded to another country. And so we took definite action. And you could see that there was seriousness in what we did. This Western Togoland thing, I mean, either our security services are so inept or so confused or inefficient, which I don't want to believe. Because I've been commander-in-chief before, and I've worked with these same security services, and I know that intelligence is very key and that they are good at gathering intelligence. This Homeland Study thing was there when I was president, and yet we had people who infiltrated them, and we knew at every stage, what they were up to. But they were doing seminars and press conferences and things, Now they are becoming a bit more, bold. And the president must be taking bold action. We saw some of the videos. I saw one video where there were soldiers escorting a car. There was a car in the middle. And these boys holding the flag were right in front of them. And I said, but why are they escorting this vehicle instead of arresting these guys holding the flag? Because if you arrest them, then you're going to be able to get some more intel on what their operations are. It looks like the whole government is not serious about this. The president himself is not serious about it.
Right. So you heard President Akufo-Addo, Vice President Dr. Bawumia, and also President John Mahama. Now, Dr. Theo Champong, let me read 2 messages from 2 of our viewers. Yakubu Ibn Chambers says, I have no doubts whatsoever that the activities of the 31st century failed secessionists at the border town in the Volta region will be halted in their details and decisively dealt with. Sitting at the negotiation table with these criminals is a no. I will not describe them as secessionist groups, but terrorists. That's my emphasis. Terrorists who have infringed Ghana's territorial laws and must not be treated with kid gloves as usual. Then the next contributor says, that is Richard Nyama. Richard Nyama, he says, a UN panel on March 17, 2005 described terrorism as any act, quote, intended to cause death or serious bodily harm to civilians or non-combatants with the purpose of intimidating a population or compelling a government or an international organization to do or abstain from doing any act, unquote. Based on the above definition, aren't these guys terrorists? Emphasis, terrorists. And shouldn't we designate them as such and pass or use these laws to quash this group? Later, I'll refer to a law that Asa Nkrumah brought to all of our attention sometime late in the week. Yes, let's hear you. Why are you guys encouraging negotiation or mediation or whatever?
Look, there's a famous statement that one man's terrorist is another man's freedom fighter, right? it all depends on the perspective you're looking at things from. So all over the world, if you look at the history of armed conflict, etc., you can go in with a military solution or military approach, but if you don't address the fundamental root cause issues, you end up with a long drawn out, campaign of these groups either regrouping later and then staging attacks, left, right, center, or even expanding their scope beyond just like the immediate vicinity in the Volta region. But you could possibly see, attacks in other parts of the country. So my honest assessment of the situation leads me to believe that the solution is not necessarily a military one. Of course, the issue of the territorial integrity of Ghana is one that I think is settled, in law. But there are pent-up frustrations and issues with, some of the groups. However marginal they may be, clearly the fact that they can coordinate such an attack, the fact that they can, seize stations, etc., and even kill a person in the process, indicates to me that, look, they have grown in capability, they have grown in scope. So you can go arresting all of them, you can gather your intel, and you can, use all the military might that you have at your disposal. But if you don't address what is driving the conflict, such as the supposed perceived marginalization, or that we don't even belong to the sovereign history or the sovereign nation of Ghana, the way to deal with it, I think, is to call them to the table. So it's not necessarily negotiation as such, but I think it's more of mediation and trying to understand what the root causes are. I think that if we only deal with the military side of things, mark my words, we will be down here in a couple of years' time discussing the same set of issues. This time around, the group would have probably even expanded their capability and scope and would have been launching more daring one-off attacks against, maybe bridges or police stations or, other strategic state facilities.
So what? The state should sit down with them and say what? We beg you, stop.
It's not begging them stop.
And show them understand. And show them the fact. And show them the fact of law. That as the laws of this country, the laws regarding our territory and everything are concerned, there is nothing like a Western Togoland that is separate from the Ghana today.
The people in the group or the leaders understand, I am sure, that there is nothing like Togoland as it exists, right? But people have been poisoned over time to come to believe that the Western Togoland has never really been a part of Ghana. That sentiment still festers among some members in the community and in these groups. So I don't think that just going in there and just arresting them and just, putting them in jail would really resolve that hard up or pent-up frustrations that the groups have.
Let me come back to the studio.
To look at the history of conflict, look at what is happening in Cameroon with the Ambazonia secessionist movement, or even in Nigeria with the Biafra war led by Colonel Ojukwu in the late 60s. Similar undertones, but the military approach or the militaristic approach has actually ended up elongating or compounding the issue. And that's where I really think that, yes, you can address the military aspect, at least in the short term. So we've seen some arrests, but without really trying to work on the core drivers, without trying to bring the group to the table to actually discuss both the legal, the social issues, the supposed, renewed ethnic sentiment for a pan-Arab nation. Right. Without addressing those things, I don't think that we would have solved the issue. We will be here.
Thank you. Let me come back to the studio and let me begin with Richard. And Richard Anyagba. Now, I was referring earlier to a law that Isankoma brought to our attention sometime this week. about the Prohibited Organizations Act 1976. So as far back as 1976, by an SMCD or SMC decree, we had prohibition of the Togoland Liberation Movement, etc. And the law says the following organizations are hereby declared unlawful and prohibited, namely the organization known variously as the Togoland Liberation Movement, TLM, the Tolimo, the National Liberation Movement of Western Togoland, and NLMWT, and guess what? Any other organization, howsoever called, whose objects, those who are making the law were sure what they were doing. Yeah. Howsoever called, whose objects include advocating and promoting the secession from the Republic of Ghana of the former British mandated territory of Togoland or part of that territory, or the integration of that territory with a foreign country. Says without prejudice to the generality of paragraph B of the subsection paragraph B of subsection 1, the President may, by executive instrument, declare any organization to be an organization to which that paragraph applies, and any other organization so declared is an organization to which that paragraph applies. Now, if you are caught in doing the things that the law talks about, you are committing a criminal offense, and in fact, you could be looking to going to jail for about 5 years or paying a hefty fine. This is the approach some say we should go. Yeah. And just a while ago, Ace supplies me another set of information about our various other laws and the constitutions over the period, which are very clear. That the particular area being talked about has always remained and been part of Ghana. Yeah. And so there is no any, place that is separated. The approach is that legal way, let's go. Dr. Bamian says, no room for any engagement. Yeah. When you listen to people like Theo Champong, Kwesi Enim, retired Colonel Festus Abuaje, who have an experience and say you can do that, nonetheless try a certain mediation negotiation. What do you say about that?
Well, something I think that you are clear in your mind when you hear this and the position of the law that there is no room for any such negotiation. And the question is, how do you even begin? Who do you begin to talk to? What legitimacy, do they bring to the table? Right. What is their standing in that conversation that we are the ones who want to succeed? On whose behalf are they working? You understand? So clearly, there really cannot be any such discussion. And then you see, and even in the context in which this is happening, they don't have a program that in any way resonate with the people. So what they are seeking has nothing in connection with the will of the people. So on whose behalf are they coming to the table? And then when you do that, it's a slide, right? Literally. So any number of people can get up and say, okay, well, we want to claim this piece of land, and therefore you have to bring them in the interest of peace. So really, that's the way to go. Now, the law is very clear, and I am concerned in a way that how you address this, because some of these things, they quickly will cascade out of control if in attempting to deal with them, you use excessive force, which was what the president was talking about, and clearly it's happened in other places where the use of excessive force actually drove people to the point of radicalization, where they also would want to respond in some measure. So it needs absolute tact in dealing with this in ways that helps keep the unity of the country intact. So there are many, many different ways we can deal with it, but I don't think that negotiation is one of them. Okay. Clearly, that is actually worsening the situation. If we go, yes, we go to that point. Yes.
So, look, Sammy, you have a certain disposition because you are ranking on foreign affairs. Dr. Bombande is saying, look, let's treat them humanely. Once they are arrested, let's not treat them in a manner that breaches their human rights and everything. I'll be the last to say do anything that infringes on their human rights. But when you listen to people, people like those I have read, they say treat them as terrorists. Kobna Atabedu sends a message. I can't read what he wants us to do to them. Actually looking for a way that will crush them, including executions. But okay, you have to follow the law. Now, what does President Mahama mean when he says they are being treated with kid gloves? Practically, that's what he's saying. That President Akufo-Addo is not on top of the job. What does he want the president to do? Go get them arrested, shot in broad daylight, as some people say, do something like that to one or two of them, the rest of them will shut up forever?
So President Mahama is clear in his mind that having been commander-in-chief before and having been confronted with this threat which has been with us for generations, he, as he said eloquently, managed to use superior intelligence to be ahead of the activities of this group. And he expects the current commander-in-chief to do the same. Look, let's face it. We have on our face an embarrassing security failure, a totally abysmal intelligence gathering and analysis regime which has led to this. To have 2 police stations, to have barricades erected, and to have these persons plot, plan, train, weaponize, get radicalized, have camps in our jurisdiction.
At least there was intelligence that foiled arson on the whole central market. You don't acknowledge that?
I say that intelligence could even be faulty intelligence. It shouldn't have been the actionable intelligence. Sometimes in these matters, and if you are conversant with these groups, right from Algeria to Cameroon to Nigeria, Boko Haram and all, sometimes they can mislead security agencies. For all you know, they never plan to attack the whole market. Because if you look at their modus operandi now, it's clear that they have targeted state installations to send a message to the Ghanaian government that, look, we have declared war. It's a declaration of war, really, that we've declared war and we are coming for you. So, police stations, the district assembly office, and to even further ridicule us the more and make light of the response. After all the deployment, 2 days later, they strike again at another state installation, the STC yard, and burn down buses. So it's clear that we can do better with intelligence gathering, actionable intelligence, and acting swiftly. Look, you have a very elaborate security architecture now. You have a minister in charge of national security, you have a minister in charge of the interior, you have a minister for defense, you have a minister of state at the interior ministry in charge of security. You have a national security advisor, probably the most elaborate security architecture we have had in the history of this country. And so it is unpardonable to have these things happening. I mean, to the extent that even when you have increased visibility, when you are present in Ho, and a great deal of soldiers have been deployed in the Volta region, and yet these people are still staging successful attacks, that must worry us. And I believe that's what President Mahama is saying. Now, it is important to come to the matter of how do we deal with this? Do you go all out brute force, or you sit and negotiate? I am in the middle. I take the view that we should be more nuanced about the response, particularly guided by history. Many people do not know that on the day Ghana was celebrating its independence, March 6, 1957, this group, led by its leader, the Togolese Congress, which was led by S.G. Anto, engage in violent insurgencies all over the country, still claiming that their territory was not part of the Ghana unification project. They were rounded up. Nkrumah used brute force. On the 11th of March 1958, S.G. Anto, the leader of the Togoland Congress, Kojo Ayeke, and Alex Odame were found guilty of various crimes of violence and sentenced to 6 years in prison. Surprisingly, a few months after, in June 1958, a jury at the Court of Appeal acquitted them, saying that the procedure that the jury had used was irregular and illegal. And those interested in this particular matter, I recommend Dr. Obed Samuel's book, The Political History of Ghana. He lived it, experienced it, and he's documented in great detail what happened. So you've seen that in Nkrumah, Achampong, they use a lot of force. But it does appear that the other side of using brute force is that if care is not taken, you easily create martyrs. So there are some of these people who are martyrs. And so generations that come after them feel that they must also continue the struggle. So I am in the middle going for a more nuanced approach. Yes, the security agencies should be
I have heard you, but I haven't heard clearly what President Mahama meant when he says that
I thought I addressed that earlier.
President has been weak at dealing with it in the manner he has dealt with it.
Let me declare again. Let me declare.
Hold on. Let me go to the phone lines, and
I'm sure you give me a chance to respond.
We have the rare privilege of speaking to the Reverend Chris Hesse. I'm sure most of you know that name.
Oh yes.
He's been blessed, and he's 88 now. Reverend Chris Hesse was President Nkrumah's photographer. He actually made a film in 1956 called The Plebiscite. It chronicles everything about the transvoter Togoland brouhaha. We bring him on to share with us, because if you read our history and the laws, it is very clear. One thing is clear, there's no doubt that Nkrumah had a strong hand in making sure, first, that these tribes were decimated, as in the issue of tribal, conduct. Conduct that was tribal in nature, that jeopardized the unity of Ghana, was not allowed. And then subsequently, he made the laws that you could tell that were to put all of these things in perspective. We have the Avoidance of Discrimination Act, for example, that was passed to stop all of these things. Now, Reverend Chris Hesse, thank you very much for joining us on NewsFile.
Yeah.
How does it make you feel when you hear about these disturbances in the name of a certain part of this country, falsely said not to have been unionized with Ghana?
Good morning. The way things are going, that's why today I'm on air. So the way things are going, since I see people are contributing wrongly to the true facts. You see, the film industry, which have been sold, made films and spoke about the truth. When people write books, normally add their own feelings. But with the film, we show what people actually, what people spoke, what people said. So there's no distortion. You hear what they said. You see? So on the film, there's a film we shot on the plebiscite. It educates everybody. By looking at that film, all these things will die quietly. Because I think all these young guys causing this problem, they were not born. So they've heard something from their fathers who were maybe children during those the 56, So let's go back to the film. This film is in London. Samboku Jeto knows a lot about it. All the government know about these films. I've been appealing to them to go to release the films to us so that we see our history. Let's go back to our history. All these films are in London. Let's pay the laboratories to digitize and send the films back to Ghana so that we know our history, we know the truth, and the truth will make us free. So let's go back to the presidency film, plebiscite film, and see the truth. People who signed the agreement, the UN people who signed, all these things are there. I was in the camera system, but I shot a lot of material. So why are we wasting time and talking as if we brought Ghana? No. The history is there. So once again, I'm appealing to our government to send the money so that all these things from independence to now will be released to Ghanaians, for the average Ghanaian to see where we came from and compare to where we are. You see, and moreover, I was shocked last time. I was strolling in front of my house when people were talking about this same thing, and they were tracing the problem back to Bafo Sakoto. They say Bafo Sakoto was the founder of the NLM, and they brought up the UP, and the UP brought up the NPP. What has that got to do with the plebiscite? There's a lot of distortion going on. So please, let's go back to the film. Let's bring back all these films and show and educate Ghanaians. I think.
Okay.
I'm done.
All right.
I'm done.
Thank you.
We are wasting time. What we are talking, we are wasting time.
Okay. Reverend Chris Hesse, thank you so very much for making the time to talk to us. And Reverend Chris Hesse was President Nkrumah's photographer. He made a film in 1956 about the plebiscite, and it chronicles everything about the Transvoter Togoland discussion. He feels, and I think that is so right, that if this film is made available, it could be part of the biggest tools of educating people to know the right things and reject the falsehoods about what is leading to all of this. Now, gentlemen, I'm going to give you just a minute each, and then we conclude this discussion, take a break, and return to deal with, find out how the two political parties intend to deal with the matter of corruption. Yes, so Richard.
Okay, well, so very quite interestingly, I thought we were projecting a discussion of, how to fix this problem and the challenges. But my brother drifted quite away from that norm. You see, there is no security failure. What obtains is the politicization and the bastardization of the security, which is being led, unfortunately, or enabled by the former president. There is no way myself or my brother knows about what the security is doing, in which case you say they have failed. He has not been briefed on that matter. And if he's been briefed, he cannot speak to it.
You're saying that citizens do not have a right to critique the work of the security.
They can.
And they must at all costs be involved in the security operations to know that something has gone wrong.
No, but the point I am making is that what he claims is a failure, it's not a failure, but what happens and is happening, led and enabled by the former president, is the bastardization of the security.
Is it really led and enabled by the former president? Before the former president spoke, did you hear sections of citizens talk about intelligence failure?
Which citizens were NDC?
Really?
Yes, absolutely. And I heard my brother said that before. And even to the extent there are individuals from the NDC who says that the action by this group was not treasonable.
You have to be NDC. So, you mean you have to be NDC, or I have to be NDC?
No, is it
to subject what happened to a certain criticism that, for example, this country and the security claims, that it has been aware of the activities of this group for all these years. They showed up, did some things in 2017, they did in 2018, we have been arresting them, bits and pieces, and we were aware of their presence and how they were hoisting flags around, you know, in Togo, areas in Togo. And we just woke up one morning and they held everybody to ransom. You're saying that citizens don't have a legitimate right to ask questions, but they must be NDC to follow the security operations?
So that's a misunderstanding what point I'm making. My brother made a point that security failure has been occasioned. And I'm saying that that is not the case. What has been occasioned, or what we're seeing, is the intentional bastardization of the security to call it by that name. That's what has happened.
Are you concerned, as a citizen, are you concerned about what happened when this group was able to completely dominate the police the way they did in the region?
Absolutely.
You're concerned?
I'm concerned, and that's what we've been talking about. And
you would applaud the security for the period in which it took them to get in. We have heard Dr. Kwesienin and others, you know, foremost experts, say that this was abysmal.
Well, you see, the issue, if you want to look at it very clearly, the question you want to ask is that what else could have happened that didn't happen? That's when you are looking at it objectively. So that, but for the intelligence and the work that was done, you could have seen something much more grand than what you saw.
Have you been to the region after what happened?
I was in the region when this happened.
Okay, so you have seen that there is security presence almost everywhere.
Yes.
What happened? Why couldn't something, a semblance of that, have happened earlier?
Well, you see, there are parts of this conversation that probably I don't want to drift into, but the key issue is that this would have been much different, would have been talking about a much different story, okay, than what we are dealing with, but for the intelligence and the work they've done.
And heads of the security should have been resigning. If we had to talk about a much different story.
Something. Yeah, so you are not talking about that because they were working. You see, and I find the discussion rather counterproductive when instead of dealing with the issue, some have chosen to actually bastardize the security. So I just want to make the point that that is not what happened, but what is happening, which sadly is a conversation by my brother to say, is there a deliberate attempt to bastardize the security? Why is it that in America you had 9/11 happened, right? Is it because the intelligence wasn't working, right? But these things, rather than...
What a comparison.
No, I'm just saying, it's not a comparison, I'm just telling you an instance. Look at that and tell me, was it a failure of intelligence? You cannot say that, okay? So the point we need to deal with is not the politicization of that and the bastardization of security, but what effort we must put in to address the issue.
And you have been spot on what we should do. Yes, your final 1 minute.
So many things to say in a few minutes. First of all, I was talking about...
Yes, and I forgot about Theo. Sorry, forgive me. And you also get your final 1 minute. Yes.
I was talking about a more nuanced approach. So I'm for superior intelligence. So that's the security aspect. I am for public education. So Reverend Chris Hesse is right. We should put out more correct information because there's a propaganda warfare out there. And that public education should all the way dovetail into even our curriculum. Let's bring back history and teach the right history. It's important. Number 3, let's avoid discriminatory politics, discriminatory pronouncements. If you go to the Volta region, a lot of young people feel that, you know, in the political discourse, in the things that are said, it comes to registration, it comes to elections, the targeting of particular constituencies and all of that. All of those things are feeding into a certain narrative that we must address. Now I come to the fact that
you agree that concerns of underdevelopment are never a basis for what is going on.
There can be no justification. There's no justification.
Now,
and I have been clear. Last year I condemned this. At every platform I condemn what is going on. There can be no justification.
Right.
I also want to bring to the attention of all of us that, look, we are now seeing 3 different flags. So we are not talking about only one group. It appears that Papavi's group, the Homeland Study group, has mutated. There's a certain metamorphosis going on. Radicalization has set in of different groups. We have counted 3 flags in the Volta region. And as we have seen elsewhere with terrorist organizations, it's possible for even bad guys, evil elements, to take advantage of so-called secessionism and engage in mercenary activity and destabilize.
There's a tweet by somebody who...
So how sure even are we that those who are doing this are secessionists?
There was a tweet, I think it was from the Restoration Group, seeking to
dissociate itself.
Applaud the Homeland Study Group, that if that's what they are doing, then they all have one agenda, so it's good.
So you see, we should be mindful of the threat that others can hide behind this and perpetrate more harm. But you have to permit me to quote the report of the Constitution Review Commission.
Okay.
Very important. This matter.
Straight. Let's move on.
You know, they received a petition on this matter, and it's important to remind all of us that the chair of the Constitution Review Commission, who did such a fantastic job, all analysts, all experts agree on that, is Professor Emeritus Albert Kojo Fiajo, who is a prominent son of the Volta region. They write at page 786, the second set of submissions concerns the 1956 plebiscite, which resulted in the former British Togoland joining the Gold Coast in an independent Ghana in 1957. The submissions on this matter centered on the absence of an official document evidencing the union of the former British Togoland, which was a trust territory under British administration, and the former Gold Coast. The submissions also called for recognition in the constitution of the former British Togoland as an identifiable people and a constituting element of Ghana. Other persons who made submissions on this issue added that Ghana and the former British Togoland should come to new terms of agreement in which the latter is recognized as an independent entity within Ghana as exists between Tanzania and Zanzibar. The Commission observes on the issue of the status of the former British Western Togoland that Part 9 of the 1957 Constitution of Ghana defines the regions of Ghana at independence. It provided that the Trans-Volta Togoland region became part of the territories of Ghana and subsequently became Trans-Volta Togoland region. It further added Northern Togoland to the Northern Territories to make up the Northern region. The Commission finds that all the submissions which were made on the former British Togoland were made largely by members of the movement called the Western Togoland Restoration Congress, which is based in some parts of the Volta region. The submissions on this matter did not receive support from any other region. The Commission finds that some of the petitioners on the British Togoland issue indicated that the relationship that should exist between the former British or Western Togoland and Ghana should be similar to the relationship between Tanzania and Zanzibar. The Commission further finds that the island of Zanzibar gained independence from Britain in December 1963 as a constitutional monarchy. In 1964, a revolution led to the establishment of the Republic of Zanzibar and Pemba. In that same year, the Republic was subsumed by the mainland former colony of Tanganyika. This United Republic of Tanganyika and Zanzibar was renamed United Republic of Tanzania, of which Zanzibar remains a semi-autonomous region. This was achieved through an agreement called the Articles of Union, which was incorporated in the 1964 Interim Constitution as the Acts of Union. The most notable feature of the Acts of Union was the establishment of the double government structure that is also part of Tanzania's current constitution. This structure included one government for the Union and one largely autonomous independent government of Zanzibar. The president of Zanzibar also served as vice president of the Union.
Can we get to the recommendation?
So, the Commission observes that the position and request of the Western Togoland Restoration Congress, the main group behind this submission, has the potential of affecting the sovereignty and continuous existence of the nation-state called Ghana. To accede to the request for autonomy, even within Ghana, as exists in Tanzania and Zanzibar, may open the floodgates for other constitutive parts of Ghana prior to 1957 to make similar requests. This may eventually lead to the breakup of the unitary republic. The Commission advises that there is no basis for the grant of such petition, and the nation should be mindful of such potential divisive tendencies. Having regard, as I conclude, having regard to the length of time Ghana has been administered as a composite and unitary state, the well-established rules of international law on the intangibility of established frontiers and the territorial integrity of a state, as well as the interests of nation building, the Commission finds the petition baseless, potentially disruptive to the established constitutional order, and thus unworthy of consideration.
Thank you very much. Now, on that very, very sound, educative note, from a Constitution Review Commission that we invested so much into to bring us the biggest socio-political data so far ever gathered in this country, unfortunately, which is sitting and gathering waste instead of being implemented. Let me get to Theo for his 1 minute, and then we'll draw the curtains on this subject. Hello, Dr. Theo Champong.
Yes, I'm here. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay, brilliant. Yeah, so, I mean, the question that I see on your screen is, can it be nipped in the bud? Yes, I think so. And how can that be done? I support the calls that have been made. I think education. In fact, in my own research, I've come across a lot of archival materials, some of which are public, others too that can be accessed, including what the Reverend Hesse also suggested to be used in the public education campaign. Secondly, I also think we must actually work on back channel routes, for mediation. I don't think we should discount that. Use the Regional House of Chiefs, use the Council of State, etc., to work on that. And finally, on number 3, the threat is credible. Let's not just wish them
Dr. Theo Champong. Dr. Theo Champong, the pursuit of this mediation negotiation, I can tell you that apart from what even the politicians here are agreed and reject that approach, there's majority of the people, discerning Ghanaians home and abroad, who are sending us messages right now and saying your proposition should not be encouraged 1 minute. And that's what Dr. Bawumia said is the way to go. There are people who have asked the question, mediation for what? What are we going to negotiate? Our constitutions, starting with number 1, the Independence Act, 1957. The Independence Act is very clear that what they are pushing doesn't exist. If you look at the Gold Coast Constitution, Order in Council 1954, is very clear that what is being talked about now is false. There is not a question of the lack of a union at the time in which they speak about. If you say you are underdeveloped, so we come and sit down with you and negotiate that what?
Yeah, so the mediation, or to use another word, negotiation, is not about carving out a territory, right, or creating a semi-autonomous state. It's actually bringing the people around the table to talk about the issue. Clearly, it's not going to be that they would end up giving or carving a piece of Ghana out to them. That is settled legally, constitutionally. I have no issues with that. But what I'm suggesting really is that these are not meant to be open-ended conversations, but you can use back channels. You can use the chiefs, you can use the Council of State, you can use all these other eminent groups to reach out to the groups to, resolve some of the concerns that they have. That's really all that I'm calling for. And then on top of that, you have your public education that you have to deepen. Okay.
Thank you. Now I'm going to read just 1 or 2 messages from Kekubako and one other to end this. The Catholic Standard editorial, this edition says, don't trivialize secessionist activities. And the editorial is very emphatic. And when you refer to the Catholic Standard, take your mind back to the military regimes era and what the Catholic Standard represented for Ghana. Yeah. The strongest voice, if you like, around the time, one of the strongest voice. Now, Kekubako says, the military side of things, quote unquote, military side of things, is triggered if, operative word is if, the secessionists apply force and violence in pursuit of their treasonable mission. Negotiations or dialogue to what end? Negotiating our territorial integrity and national sovereignty away or what? Negotiations or dialogue have never resolved such matters, especially when and where the rebels or secessionists resorted to force or violence without the legitimate entity or state government applying counterforce to subdue and bring them, that's the rebels and or secessionists, to the table to surrender and abort their mischief. Yes, in the long term, balanced, equitable, and national economic development programs and political decentralization would facilitate the reduction and growth of the insurgency, especially help isolate the leadership and intellectual base of the secessionist movement. I read a very final one from a mentor, Kweku, and he says, the point ought to be made very clearly. There is nothing to negotiate, absolutely nothing. Chapter 2, 4.1, Directive Principles of State Policy, is emphatic about what constitutes the, you mean chapter 6 of the Constitution, what constitutes the territory, okay, yes. Chapter 2, yeah, you're right, you're right. Yeah. What constitutes the territory of Ghana is what we inherited on March 6, 1957. How can that be negotiated with a band of criminals? If we do, we open the door to copycats. What stops Ashantis or Moshis or Hausas from following suit to regain their pre-1984 kingdoms? Citing poverty or marginalization as a cause is also completely unacceptable. Wasn't Rawlins and Ewe head of the state of this country for almost 2 decades, along with many prominent Ewes? What about poverty in what used to be the Northern Territories and the discrimination against them, plus their consignment to menial roles in our society? One can understand a call for education so that the young people of the Volta region can better understand Ghana's history, and that should be done. But to negotiate to compromise on what? Land, water, or air? Stop it already. We'll take a break here. We'll be right back to ask which of the two parties is serious about fighting corruption.